well-being is a skill. Can we do it well in the intercultural backgrounds? Or can we have a better understanding of different values? It's going to be the topic for our next speaker. I'd love to introduce the Senior Advisor for Global Affairs to the President of Columbia University, and she is also the Chair of the Board of AFS Intercultural Programs. Let's welcome Dr. Vishakha Desai.
Good afternoon. I am delighted to be a provocateur, but I'm going to provoke you to think without PowerPoint. So you have only to listen to me, but I hope you will think as well. What I want to do, first of all, let me just say it's wonderful to come after David, because actually what I have to say complements what you had to say. And that has to do with urgency of intercultural learning for all. Why do I say urgency? There's a number of reasons, because we used to say, it's very nice to learn about each other. It's very good and important to really be in a situation where you don't know somebody, but I'll get to it when I can. It's like as if it's a luxury. I want you to think of that as urgency. Just think of where we are today. Everywhere you look, whether it's Rohingyas leaving Myanmar, Catalans wanting to secede from Spain, the 45th American president shouting, "America first," Brexit, Brits wanting to leave Europe. Global is under attack. The idea that global was an aspirational phenomenon 2 decades ago, everybody wanted to be in the world, the CEOs were everywhere, going around, the star artists were parachuting in and out of biennials and triennials. Today, what almost feels like you can't use the word global. There is huge pressures, ultranationalism, ethnic cleansing, smaller and smaller units, post-truth world. All of that suggests that somehow our world is getting smaller. But I'm here to remind you that the facts tell us that actually interconnectedness and the interdependence of the world is still here, and it is not likely to go away. Let me just give you 4 examples, and there are many more. 250 million or more people, according to a recent UN survey, live outside of the place they were born in. If these immigrants made a country, they would be the 4th largest country in the world. Meaning, people are on the move, sometimes for sheer survival, sometimes escaping environmental disasters, oftentimes just in the desire to make a better life. If you think of climate change, despite what the American president has to say, the reality is when the ocean waters rise, they don't know any boundaries. They don't privilege one country over another. It's everybody's problem. Same goes for pandemics. When Ebola happens, it doesn't happen just in one country. It has effect everywhere, as we learned first time when SARS happened in Hong Kong and China. At the same time, we also have to understand that with these kinds of ideas, there's also the pace of change and pace of communication. Nothing today can remain purely local. Something that happens in Doha, we hear about it in New York. Nothing that's global or transnational just remains in that sphere. So this local-global interaction is very much a part of our lives. The reality is, therefore, that at the same time, there is a backlash. There's no question about that. And why is the backlash? The backlash is because there are people who don't feel that they have been able to participate in this, that they have access to understanding what these phenomena are. We have to recognize that the question is not turning the clock back. The question is, how do we create this possibility of learning about others for all? Not for the privileged few only, not only for those who have access to global education. And it's also not to say that to be globally literate or to be globally competent is antithetical to being nationally proud or to not belong to our communities. So it's very clear that to be self-aware, to be proud nationally, and to be part of the global arena is what we have to learn together, sequentially and cohesively. And that does require a sense of well-being. It does require, how do we do that? There are a number of organizations that actually have been working on this very idea. And when we think about that kind of fluidity, the phrase that I often use is what Mahatma Gandhi used. And he said, the purpose of life is to know oneself. But you can only do that if you identify with everything that lives. Think of that compassion. Think of that connection. It is about being self-aware and being globally connected. That idea of global connection or global literacy or global competence is something that I learned firsthand as an AFS exchange student many decades ago. I won't tell you how long, but long ago. And the reality is that with that, there's also Asian Society, where I had the honor of being the president and CEO for a long time, where we really worked on this idea of global literacy or global competence. So let me just quickly tell you, as David tried to do with the 4 points, that I think there is a way to think about this for all. What are the steps? The first and foremost, I believe it's very important to be able to explore the unfamiliar, to be in a place where people are not like you. And I venture to say that even today, with the whole world at your fingertip, with one click on your smartphone, you can get lots of information. The reality is that there is no substitute for being in a place that is unfamiliar. The situation that leads you to do a couple of things. The next piece is that therefore it's not just the experience itself, it's the experience that also has to go with reflection and nurturing. Nurturing of a sense of self. Because these experiences, especially at a young age, initially will create it'll cause you dislocation. How do we learn from dislocation about ourselves and then move that dislocation to desire for connection? 3, it is actually that kind of connection that then leads to empathy. Empathy is a really good word for the 21st century, I believe, because it's your ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoe without judgment. You can't do that if you're not forced to be in a situation where you have to confront that. And that leads to compassion that ultimately I've learned today leads to well-being, so thank you. 4, out of that idea of empathy and connection should come to curiosity. Curiosity that would allow you to learn more about somebody else, not just to understand, but to go deeper. And at the same time, if you learned more, But if you don't put it into action, it is no longer sufficient to just be understanding. You have to figure out how, out of these divergent points of view that you will respect, you will create a new modality, a new way of being in the world to solve the pressing challenges of the world, all of which are global in nature. So the reality is that this cannot be just left to only the privileged few who would have that access. If we don't actually prepare all of our young people, we are failing them. And then it leads to the kind of mentality that people have, which is to say, they feel left behind. Especially at a time when in many parts of the world, I'm afraid our leaders either are trying to imagine to go to some golden past that was not as global as it is today, or we have leaders who use cultural differences to divide us. It is our obligation as educators that how do we create a path through this kind of intercultural learning to prepare the citizens of tomorrow, our young people, for a more sustainable and just world. The world depends on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vishakha Desai. You are absolutely real global citizen. And also, we're very happy to have you only for 2 days in Doha.